Instead of a, cheesy 22 lessons I've learned in 2022, I'm going to do a 21 lessons I learnt from 21 pots I made in 3 months, because that's a really punchy tagline. Hi everyone, long time no see. If you're new to my channel, I'm Catherine. I am a doctor working and living in London. It's been a while since I filmed a video and things have been busy, and you might be wondering why I've got so many of these pots in front of me. One of the things I have been busy with is pottery. I just thought I would make a video reflecting on a recent 3-month membership that I did at a pottery studio near me. Just a bit of background of my pottery journey to date, just to get a bit of context. So I started being interested in pottery over lockdown in 2020. I decided to buy some clay from a pottery studio to make some hand-built pieces at home, and I just loved it. So after restrictions were a bit more lenient, I went to a couple of pottery courses, which I think were included in some of my vlogs, I think the night shift one. And then after a while of going to these courses, I realized that I had a pretty good grasp of the basics of pottery, and I just needed time and space to put the reps in, which is why I signed up for this 3-month pottery membership. Let's get to it. Pot number 1. I remember when I started my membership, I just wanted to make sure that I remembered how to make cylinders, because cylinder is the shape that a lot of other pots come from. This cylinder, I am quite happy with the shape. The angle of the interior of the cylinder is not quite matching with the exterior, and this is something that I'm still trying to work on, is to make sure that I can try and get that 90-degree angle down here inside. The thing that I quickly realized doing this membership is that glazes act very differently in different studios, and each glaze acts very differently to each other. I think I put the glaze on the rim way too thick, so you can see at some areas it's actually cracked. I was really happy with this shape, but the glazing not so happy with. So that's pot number 1. Now moving on to pot number 2. Let me get rid of this eucalyptus. In terms of the shape, I love this shape. This is the first time that I've really dedicated myself in making vases. It was the first piece that I've made that I've managed to sort of get this angular shape in, and a sort of lifted rim. Really like the proportions on this. I think the thing that threw me off with this vase is that the glaze turned out completely not what I was expecting. So the colors that I used on this vase was a gloss white, which is the same color as this, sort of really porcelain white shiny glaze. But for some reason it turned out a bit rough and sort of orangey. What this reminds me of is I think it's called patina, the sort of effect that the Statue of Liberty has. I think Blake Lively wore this once to the Met. It's got that sort of coppery, greeny tinge to it, but I really didn't like it when I first saw it. And actually looking at it now, this pot is probably one of the best things I've ever made. And that just goes to show you how such a strong expectation of how I thought this would look like ruined my perception of it in some ways. Sort of, it just made me so fixed on this idea of what it should have looked like versus how it turned out. Teachings that are very applicable to the rest of your life, I guess. Piece number 3 is this bowl. I'm trying not to be too harsh on myself, but maybe it's just me. Whenever I look at my own work, I tend to see what's wrong with it rather than seeing what's good or what's sort of commendable about it. So in terms of things that I like about this bowl, really like the shape of this bowl. It's got a rounded bottom, which is sometimes quite difficult to do when you're a beginner in pottery, because there is a temptation to flatten the bottom when you're lifting the walls of the bowl up. The thing where I think I went wrong again is the glaze. I essentially wanted a sort of brushed on appearance with this glaze on the rim. Either number 1, I don't think I put it on thick enough, and number 2, I don't think that I picked the right glaze for this effect. But I think the reason why I decided to paint this glaze on, I basically couldn't hold this bowl tightly enough to dip into the glaze like this without worries of me dropping it, because now it's even slipping through my fingers. The other thing that I think I could have worked on with this bowl is that I didn't really trim its exterior to match its interior, and so it just feels a bit bottom heavy. Generally mixed feelings about this bowl, but yeah, I'm sure it will serve a purpose, it will serve a function at some point. So pot number 4, this is a little teacup. Really love the shape of this. I think the only issue with this shape and how I've trimmed the bottom is that it is a bit wobbly on its base. So it's not exactly the most practical to drink a hot cup of tea from. Otherwise, I really like the shape of this. I think that it's got this sort of finesse to it. This glaze, I'm not really sure how it turned out. Like when I first collected this from the studio, I was sort of like, what is going on here? Like half of it is super thick, half of it's like blotchy. It hasn't really adhered to the pot evenly or well. But actually when I put this teacup in sunlight, every single time I notice a different detail. So for example, where the glaze has gone on really thick, there's this more sort of turquoise shine to it. And the bits where it didn't really come on well, like here, it sort of reminds me of a forest countryside feel. I think that this cup is one that will serve a nice decorative purpose. It's really helped me understand how this glaze functions, and I've actually used this glaze on other pieces, which you will see later. But yeah, all part of the trial and error. Pot number 5, I absolutely love. I think it might be the favorite thing that I've made. I'm not really sure. I know that I've mentioned that about this one, but it's a sort of like a different feeling because this one turned out exactly the way that I wanted it to turn out. It's the first time that I've tried this very, very angular shape on the side, and I think it's probably inspired by Florian Gatsby, who is a great potter who makes a lot of videos on YouTube as well as Instagram. I've also got this really nice memory from this pot. I remember when I took it from the shelf out of the kiln at the studio, one of the members came up to me and said, "Oh, that's a really, really nice pot you've got." So I feel really proud of this piece. This is when I fell in love with this glaze called Bruised Peach. It's very forgiving. It's got this lovely, lovely cream shade. The only thing that I realized when I collected this pot is that I didn't actually glaze the whole interior of this. I think that I just didn't put it deep enough inside the glaze bucket. I mean, it doesn't really bother me. I guess it just adds this sort of homemade touch to it. Really, really love this pot. Really proud of this. Pot number 6, which also comes with a bit of eucalyptus. I love this one as well. This is the final piece that I did as a practice to get better at vases, and it's probably one of the taller things that I've made. I love the shape of this. I think that it's really well proportioned. I also love this sort of rim on the top, which I've sort of tried to emulate on a couple of other vases as well. I also really like the color of this glaze. Unfortunately, something happened here where there's a little spot here and a little sort of drip mark. I think that at this stage, I didn't really understand or appreciate the importance of cleaning up the glaze or sort of refining it after you put it on, because I think that if I had just sort of dipped a finger inside the glaze bucket and covered this up, then this probably would not have been here. You know, like, I'm not really bothered by it. I was a bit disappointed. Again, there's a recurring theme of disappointment here when I really did not need to be disappointed. But now I look at it and I'm like, it's cool. It's like got this homemade flair to it. I do think that these so-called little defects do give a lot of character to a piece and shows that it was made by hands and didn't just come out of a mold in a machine. I have just been putting this dried bit of eucalyptus in here and putting it next to my bed, which is a very, very millennial look, isn't it? After my foray into vases, I decided to make some cups. This one, I also tried to incorporate that sort of angular look that I had in a couple of my vases. I really like the shape of this. I think that, again, where it sort of went a bit wrong was when I was glazing this. So initially, I had put this, I believe it's Orib. Yeah, so I put the same glaze as this pot inside of the vessel, but then I think when I pour it in, something happened where I didn't like what it looked like, and so I ended up washing it out, not realizing that bisqueware, which is what happens when the pots go through the initial firing, bisqueware is very porous, and so it absorbs a lot of liquid. When I washed this out with water, the water absorbed into the pores of the pot. When I tried to attempt to glaze it again right away, it didn't really stick into the interior of the pot, and so it's come out with this sort of a bit strange sort of brownish sort of powdery color, but on the outside, because I think I've already glazed the white already, it's stuck on fine. I don't know, I've sort of got mixed feelings about this pot. Kind of gutted about the inside turning out to be brown instead of green, and again, common theme, you trial and error, and sometimes things work, sometimes things don't. And then we go on to pot number 8, which is again another cup. You can see that I was trying to make matching ones, which they've sort of turned out to be a bit matching. This is also what I've realized with pottery, is that it's really hard to make 2 matching pieces. This one came out weird as well. I don't really know what happened to this one. So I dipped it in 2 different glazes. The Bruised Peach, which is the same one as this pot. On the other side, I dipped it in one called Midnight Blue, which is this color. So it's a really dark blue. I had heard from the other members at the studio that this combination of bruised peach and midnight blue is a very popular combination, and so I had been expecting lots of great things. It's sort of got 3 different colors. It's got like the midnight blue, it's got this sort of light blue shade, and then it's got this sort of brown shade. And on top of the brown shade, in terms of its feeling, it's quite rough. I don't know enough about glaze chemistry to understand what happened with this one. To the untrained eye, it looks like some of the glaze particles may have separated so that the color pigment and the brownish bit has separated. I have no idea. Otherwise, yeah, this is another trial and error piece. Didn't turn out the way that I wanted to, but still happy with the progress that I was making on this angular cup shape. This one is pot number 9. So again, I gave this midnight blue and bruised peach combination another go, and I decided to try and do it so that it was midnight blue on the outside and bruised peach on the inside. However, I didn't really know how to get a clean line of a different glaze outside and inside, and I'd seen something on YouTube. I saw someone sort of put the bowl on top of 2 sort of chopstick looking things. They poured the glaze inside and then they poured it out. And then after the glaze had dried on the inside, they'd put this on top of the chopsticks and then they'd pour it on the top. So this is what I tried to do with this one. It didn't really achieve as clean of a line as I wanted to. So you can see at the rim, there's sort of a bit of the midnight blue that had gone into the inside. But otherwise, I mean, in terms of the shape of the bowl, really happy with this shape. It's a lot less bottom heavy than the one that we saw earlier. This one's really, really heavy. You can tell there's a lot of excess clay on the bottom. Whereas this just handles a bit more lighter and a bit more well proportioned. Yeah, I still haven't cracked the sort of different glaze on the inside and outside, so if any of you potters are watching this video and can give me some tips, then I will be very happy to follow them. So on to the next pot, which is another bowl, which I absolutely love. When I was taking this bowl off of the wheel, it warped a bit, and so I was about to just sort of chuck it back into the recycled clay, but I just thought, why don't I try and make this shape? So I just sort of squeezed the corners of the pot like this, and it came out quite pretty. I think this is the first time I've been able to achieve such a thin rim, which I'm really happy about. I really like this bowl. It's covered in that bruised peach glaze that I really like, and it made something that I was initially really annoyed about when I warped the bowl off the wheel into something that is really, really beautiful. And what I learned from this bowl is that actually sometimes the mistakes that are made is what gives the bowl its character. And this was a very, very happy mistake. So pot number 11, oh, it's this one. This is a beaker. It's currently got some propagated pothos leaves inside. I think the thing that I had also wanted to get better at, on top of making beakers, is to make handles. You can see that this handle is a bit strange looking. It's a bit irregular, it's a bit uneven in its thickness. Tried to follow some tutorial on YouTube, which wasn't really working for me. I think I just didn't have enough experience, or I wasn't pulling the clay with even thickness, and so it's just come out with this very uneven shape. But I mean, the handle fits one of my fingers, so I could sort of use this as a functional beaker for things like, I don't know, milk or gravy or whatever. But otherwise, I quite like this pot. This is the first time that I've really overlapped these 2 glazes, and I really like the countryside chic look that it has, especially in the middle. It is a bit thick in the middle, so it's got a bit of a bulge. It's also not really glazed properly around the rim, but again, I'm not really bothered with it. As you can see, as I make more and more pots, I just stop being bothered about imperfections and just accept the way that it looks. It's serving its purpose very well, propagating these pothos leaves, but I think one of them are dying, but on to pots number 12 and 13. I actually don't have them with me, but I've got some footage here of them. I had gone to my good friend's wedding over October time, and as part of their wedding present, I decided to make them a couple of mugs. I am so happy with how these turned out. Number one, because I've never managed to make mugs of this size, and I am a sort of larger mug size lover. Number two, because I had gotten so much better at making handles compared to this one, because I had watched this particular YouTube video of another technique of making handles and it just clicked with me. Number three, because the people that received it seemed to really like the present. All in all, these are probably the best mugs that I've ever made to date. Oh, and the other thing that I really love about these mugs is just how thin the rim is. Because for me, I think it's really uncomfortable drinking from a thick rim. So I managed to get these quite thin, and it feels really nice on the lips when you're sipping your hot tea. It was the first time that I've purposely made something as a present for someone else. So yeah, really happy that I got to this stage of making things for my loved ones. So pot number 14, which we are on, is this lovely bowl. I absolutely love the shape of this bowl. It's got a sort of Japanese vibe with a very, very small foot ring and extending out on the top. I really like how the exterior of the bowl also matches the interior. The desired effect that I wanted on the outside of this bowl didn't really come to fruition. I had seen someone post on Instagram this lovely, lovely blue dotty pattern with these two glazes. And then when I collect this bowl, I was sort of like, what happened? This is all brown. And then what I realized was that I had dipped these glazes in the wrong order. So I should have done this brown glaze first and then the white glaze, but instead I did the white glaze first, then the brown glaze. And I think what happens when you do the white glaze second is that it maybe pulls these glaze particles apart and reveals this lovely blue color. I'm not too bothered though. Again, I learned another important lesson through this glaze error. But otherwise, you know, I've been using this bowl quite a lot in the kitchen and it's been really functional. It's got a great size. I really love its shape. So yeah, I'm relatively happy with this one despite this sort of brown color, which I think I have grown slowly to love. So now for pots 15 and 16, I go back to the mug. I have both of them here. One of them has got some lemon ginger tea and this one is empty, which I will show you. So the reason why I made more of these mugs was that after I made the two that I gave to my friends for a wedding present, I realized that I really, really liked how they looked. So I made a couple for my own. I think the only thing that is different with these mugs compared to the ones that I gifted is that there wasn't a lot of glaze left in the bucket when I glazed these two. And so it came out quite thick because I really needed to sort of submerge them to the bottom of the bucket. So the glaze has got like a little skirt just at the bottom that's bulging out. Again, not too bothered about it. I've used these mugs so much since I've had them. I've had sort of 90% of my hot drinks in these mugs and have forgotten all the other mugs inside of my cupboard. I felt really happy when I got to this point of my pottery journey because I was able to make something exactly the way I wanted to and as a solution of a piece of crockery that would have been optimal for me. Optimal crockery sounds really weird, but what I mean is that I love a big mug. I love the way that I'm able to sort of hold both of my hands around it, especially in this cold weather in London. It's like -5 today, so this is really nice. I think it's a really great shape and size of a handle compared to its main body. Again, I will go back to the rim, and I remember one of my pottery teachers saying that for bowls and mugs, it's always nice to have a bit of a beveled edge sort of coming outwards, and I'm glad I followed her advice because it just creates this really nice feel on the mouth and a nice seal when you're sipping your teas and coffees. Yeah, all in all, love, love, love these mugs, and now I'm going to sip some of my tea from it. It's also super nice to drink something out of something that you made. It just gives it a bit more of like a nice feeling. Difficult to describe in words, it's just like nice. So number 17 is this beaker. I love this beaker. You can probably tell that I'm speaking about my pottery towards the end of my membership a lot more fondly than the pottery at the beginning of my membership, but it is important to remember that all of the pots at the beginning, which I didn't really like, led to the learning and development and improvements that I am seeing now. I decided to make another beaker because I just didn't really like the way that the handle looked on this one. Love, love, love how it turned out. Love the handle. I love the size of this beaker. I've used it on a couple of meals to pour gravy and it functions really, really well. The glazes I also love. On the other side of this, the green glaze is actually dripped down, and this was a bit of a unintended, not really mistake, but it was an unintended effect. Rather than, you know, washing the whole pot out and letting it dry before glazing it again, I was just like, you know what? This looks quite cool. It's something that is a bit unexpected, and I think it adds a bit of character to this beaker. The inside of this beaker is the same color as this one, which is the orb glaze. On the outside of this beaker, I used a gloss white glaze, which is the same as this, and is actually the same that is underneath this one. So that's why I was just really surprised how this one turned out to be orangey. But anyway, I am really, really happy with how this turned out. It is something that if I had seen in a shop, I would probably buy, which is probably the highest praise that one can give one's own pottery, maybe. So pot number 18 is a bowl and is another one that I made for a present for a friend. This time was a birthday present, so here's some footage of it before I gave it away. I had asked this particular friend what glaze combination she wanted, and I sent her a picture of this, and she said she really liked the sort of transition effect. This is actually the first time that I used wax to protect the bottom of my foot ring so that glaze doesn't get on it, because if glaze gets on the bottom of the pot, then it can stick to the kiln when it's in there. So I decided not to wax the middle of the bowl inside the foot ring to see what effect that it would generate, without realizing that if the glaze glaze was on top of my signature, you won't be able to see it, so I ended up sort of using a sponge and removing bits of the glaze on the bottom so that you can see my signature. I tend to only make foot rings on sort of taller, narrower bowls like this, and I think maybe that's the first time that I've made a sort of a wider looking foot ring. On my previous wider bowls, you can see that they do not have foot rings, so I'm really happy with the way that this turned out, and I think the person that received this gift also really likes it. Going on to pot number 19. This one I love, 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 love. I just love everything about this bowl. This is the product of a lot of experimentation from previous bowls. I'll put a picture of what it looks like before I put it in the kiln here. I had thought that I had completely messed up the glaze. I had initially glazed this whole pot in this midnight blue color with wax on the foot ring. Again, sort of removing a bit of the glaze in the middle for my signature. I had seen some pictures on Instagram of people putting on this bruised peach glaze, which is what this mug is glazed in, and dripping it on top of midnight blue and creating this really, really beautiful effect that sort of looks somewhat Japanese. I thought I had dripped the bruised peach glaze a bit too thickly on the bottom, so it actually looked like it cracked. The bruised peach glaze, as forgiving as it is, essentially just sort of thinned itself out so that the final bowl doesn't feel too thick. It's got this really cool sort of like star-like effect on the bottom of the bowl. I absolutely love this bowl. I love its size, I love its shape, and it's another pot that if I'd seen in a shop, I would have probably bought. So again, very, very proud of this one. Pot number 20 is another one that I sent to a friend for a birthday present. This is a cup in the effect of the glaze of this beaker. This friend wanted a cup to put a flat white in, and I think this one is a bit too tall, but I'm really happy with the shape of this. This was the first time that I threw with clay that I started reclaiming myself in the studio, and I think that this one was probably a bit too dry to throw with, because even when I was trimming it, I couldn't quite get the bottom to be even, and so as you can see here, it's a bit sort of wobbly. It's not wobbly enough for me to worry about like a health hazard, like if a hot drink was in there that it would really easily topple over. But I think in terms of the future, if I were to throw with clay that I'm going to reclaim myself, I just need to make sure that the moisture is the right level so that it doesn't cause me future problems when, for example, I'm trying to trim a bottom and I can't quite get it level. I think that was a problem, I'm not exactly sure. Actually, in general, I do struggle with getting a flat bottom on pots. So if anyone has any tips on trying to get a level bottom, let me know. At the moment, I'm just using like a flat tool to put on top of my bottoms when I think they are level. If they don't really wobble on top of the bottom, I just assume that they're flat. But this one definitely had a bit of a wobble, but was good enough, I felt, to give as a present. The final one, so this is pot 21, which was meant to be a mug actually, but because my membership was coming to an end, I didn't have time to attach a handle on this. And it was basically me taking a risk of attaching a handle in the rush and risking the handle and the body of the clay cracking, or just accepting that I'm going to make a sort of mug-like formation without a handle. I'm glad that I continued with making this without a handle, because I do feel like it would have been too stressful and too uncertain to put a handle on this with the amount of time that I had. I tried a new glaze combination with this one. So this is a, I think, blush rutile. Yeah, it's called blush rutile and mustard. So mustard is the same one that is on the bottom of this beaker. It didn't really turn out the way that I wanted it to. I thought it was going to have this dotty pattern where the two glazes overlap, but instead it's got this sort of a bit of a rough texture on it. Don't really know what to do with this pot, to be honest. One thing that I've been looking into more recently is maybe making candles out of my ceramics. I think that this would be a really good shape to have a candle in, but otherwise really, really happy with the shape and size. I just need to try and think of what I am going to do with this one. So that concludes the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. I'm assuming that most of the subscribers to this channel are actually subscribed for medical/GP related content, but it's nice to share some of my non-medical interests. So comment down below whether you have any new skills or hobbies that you want to learn in 2023. And also I'd be interested to hear what has been your favorite pot out of the 21 that I showed you. I've got a couple more videos planned, but until then, I hope you had a lovely holiday season and Happy New Year, and wishing you all the best for 2023. See you later.